Hello and welcome to the third and the Don Football Show. I am Joe. With me is Cecil, as always, here to recap the wild card round and preview the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. There was a lot of blowouts this week, but we always love playoff football. Cecil, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I am a little disappointed in the division on the wild card round. It was just a lot of blowouts. One I really ones were just painful. The night game in particular was probably one of the worst football games I've seen. It wasn't really even fun to watch. So, yeah, but divisional round usually is a lot better. It's the same thing with everybody. Everybody always wants more seeds, but that doesn't always mean that it's going to be a better tournament because most of the time that stuff doesn't get an upset unless you're the Green Bay Packers.
Of course, yeah, the Green Bay Packers. We'll get to that game in a little bit, but Cease, let's start with the first game of the weekend. We had the Texans blowing out the Browns 45-14. This was, Joe Flacco not playing well. He got to 300 yards, but it was mostly garbage time. We had the Texans really lighting up the scoreboard in this one. CJ Stroud, we're both Stroud boys all year long, paid off for us in this one. Got the big win. A lot has to be said about CJ Stroud's performance. A lot has to be said about D'Amico Ryans doing what he did in the first year of his coaching tenure with the Houston Texans.
Oh, absolutely. It was a phenomenal game if you're a Stroud boy or a Texans fan in general. I'm also very happy about this game. Now, while it was a blowout, it also kind of made us look right because we kind of said a lot of things that could happen and were a good prediction of what would happen, like Joe Flacco throwing interceptions that could cost them dearly in the game. That happened twice. We thought CJ Stroud would play very well, which he did. So a lot of things we kind of thought could happen. The reasons why we picked the Texans outright did happen, and they happened in spades to a point that even you and I probably didn't predict that much of a blowout of the Cleveland Browns defense. So they look dangerous. They were my dark horse. I put money down on the Texans to make the Super Bowl, not win it, but make it. So and those odds have completely skyrocketed everywhere else. So I'm feeling pretty good about the pick, and I'm feeling pretty good about this game afterwards.
I am as well. Browns have a offseason of future decisions to make, interesting decisions to make in terms of Deshaun Watson, Joe Flacco. Does Joe Flacco want to come back? They've already made coaching staff changes on offense. It seems a little bit premature to me, Cease. They did what they could with this offense. It's just you had your starting running back get hurt. You have Deshaun Watson who didn't play well, and then you had a bunch of other quarterbacks get hurt. You go to Joe Flacco. I don't think offense was necessarily the issue because of X's and O's or anything. I think it's just you get down to the level of, yeah, Jerome Ford played okay. Joe Flacco played okay in spurts, but they're not the guys you originally thought were going to be the guys. And then you also had injuries on that offensive line. So we'll see if they fix things in this offseason. And for the Texans, excited to see what they can do. Another possible upset chance this week against the Baltimore Ravens. Next game up, we have the Chiefs beating the Dolphins 26-7. Now, the Chiefs have kind of found their footing a little bit here at the end of the season. It's not like they're the old Chiefs where they're lighting up the scoreboard, but I applaud Andy Reid. Finally committed to the run game. Isaiah Pacheco was a big beneficiary of that. 24 carries, 89 yards, 1 touchdown. We have this big Chiefs offense, and Patrick Mahomes only has 262 yards passing. It's not something we're used to seeing. Rashee Rice was maybe his top target with 130 of those yards. And for the Dolphins, they need to take a long look in the mirror after this playoff loss. Yes, it was cold, and yes, they're from Miami, but Tua didn't play well. Mike McDaniel kept on calling a game that I don't think was very good at all, where there was a lot of screens and stuff that were behind the line of scrimmage and just let the Chiefs swarm the ball carriers. And the whole season they had been built this team over attacking the middle, throwing it 15-yard dig routes to just Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, and then the deep parts of the field and the short parts of the field. Their whole offense is built on stretching you vertically and horizontally. It seemed like they only wanted to do it horizontally in this game. So for me, Cease, Dolphins had a fantastic regular season, faltered down the stretch, but they're a team that really needs to get more of an identity going forward, or stick to their identity if that's what they had.
Yeah, I mean, their offense really did fall apart kind of towards the end of the season. Tua was making some bad. He's forcing the ball into weird spots that he shouldn't. When he does throw the ball downfield, and like you said, it's a lot of just short route screens that aren't really doing. And it's like he had that one bomb was still a little underthrown. The weather obviously played a huge factor in that kind of thing. But the Dolphins' offense, pound the rock with Mossert and A-Chain. You have two good running backs This is a game where you need to run the ball. That's when they were good, is when they were really using that run game, and then that set up a lot of that pass stuff as well. So I think they got away from that, and I think that was a huge issue. And they were down in these games, and it really put Tua in a bad spot where they became one dimensional, and he struggled. I mean, there's no way to go around that. He did struggle. Now, I think he should be the quarterback for the Dolphins for the future, the long term. But the reality is they just didn't do what complemented their offense very well this season. Um, the defense too. I mean, it's just sad because every pass rusher they have basically went down with injury. So Pat Mahomes basically got infinite time, could run out of the pocket, could really do anything because pass rush wasn't getting home, and blitzing to try to get any kind of pass rush, and that's just it's just triage at that point. Once you have to start sending pressure when you're a team that usually doesn't want to or doesn't have to, it's going to cause some struggles for your team because it's guys having to be one on one, and yeah, the receivers for the Kansas City Chiefs aren't great, but Travis Kelce amount of yards, and obviously Rashee Rice got some deep ones as well. So it's just something that kept them down with injury and just kind of getting away from their identity. I think offensive line a little bit. And I think just from there, it's really just scheme because they don't need anything in the receiver or tight end room weapons. Raheem Mostert hopefully will be back and hopefully doesn't start to decline. He shows no signs so far. But really, it's going to be that secondary at times because they let up a lot of big passes and a lot of things to happen kind of later in the season this year. So hopefully guys get back healthy. Nick Chubb probably won't be ready for the season. So, I mean, we'll see. But there's a lot of good things the Dolphins did this season that need to carry over to the next season. And they really need to clean up whatever went wrong at the end of the season because you don't want to get labeled with the lack of toughness and physicality because they were physical and they were tough early in the season. They just lost it as the stretch run happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay for us to understand that injuries played a part, but at the end, the history books aren't going to remember the injuries. They're just going to see who won Super Bowl championships, and they need to get it figured out. So hopefully they can stay healthy next year. Maybe they can make some changes. I know they've been very big on speed, and maybe they need to get a bruising running back to go with these speed guys. They have enough speed guys. They don't need any more speed guys at this rate. So that could help change the identity a little bit or help you in these cold weather games. We always talk about how the running game is able to do that. And maybe, don't go get Chase Claypool because every time he goes to a new team, the team ends up losing games. So just a food for thought there. All right, Sunday we were supposed to have 3 games, but the Buffalo Steelers game got moved to Monday. So we started off at around 4:30 Eastern with the Packers and Cowboys, and wow, this was a slaughtering. Packers really got off to a great start. 48-32 is the final score, and that's a lot of the Cowboys' garbage time, and Dak had some garbage time stats to make up for a bad first half. This was a great game by the Packers coaching staff, I think, first and foremost. LaFleur had them ready to go. Joe Barry on defense actually had a good game coaching, which is surprising. And Jordan Love really stepped up to the plate. Romeo Doubs, Aaron Jones, all those guys had good games. And for the Cowboys, it was complete organizational failure. Mike McCarthy looked like he didn't have this team ready to play. There was offensive concepts where guys were running routes to the same areas. And the defense, Dan Quinn, who should be the better defensive coordinator in this game and has the more talent, a lot of times he didn't have enough guys in the box to stop the run, and then at times where there was way too many DBs on the field in situations where you needed to have guys who could stop the run, especially for the Cowboys, who are one of the smallest teams in the NFL. So still no word on Mike McCarthy being fired for the Cowboys, but that was a collapse in a playoff game. They had a great regular season. That's great, but wow, I did not see that one coming, Cease.
Yeah, I mean, it was an absolute collapse, like you said. I mean, it was a shit show for the Cowboys. There's really no way to put it. Nothing right for them. CeeDee Lamb and Dak didn't seem to have a connection in the first half that was working. And, Dak threw some Dak was forcing some stuff. I mean, I don't want to take away from what the Packers did. The Packers did play a very good game. I think that LaFleur, as much as I don't like him at times, they put together a really good game plan on offense. And I think at the defense, Joe Barry, they put together something that worked really well against the Cowboys in this game. I don't know, obviously we've talked about Joe Barry being the best defensive coordinator in the world. But for some reason, he matched up really well with the Cowboys here. Again, it's hard to separate one from the other. How much is the Cowboys just being completely unprepared? How much of it is the Packers, being ready? There's something to be said that, the Packers came in this game. Nobody expected them to win. There was, no pressure on them. They were, the spread was over a touchdown in a playoff game. So, I mean, they're playing free. They're playing easy. I think that's a huge thing. And the Cowboys really did have everything to lose. And the reality is they probably weren't even looking at this game. They're probably looking at the future divisional round of who they think they were going to play. So, playoffs, you got to take it one game at a time. You can't look forward to who you might play next. You got to focus because there's no do-overs. There's no second chances. It's one each week or you're out. You advance or you're going home. They didn't seem to get that concept this week. The Cowboys are going home, and it leaves a lot of question marks for this Cowboys organization because they were the 2 seed. I mean, they got 11 wins this season. They looked dominant at times. They looked like a team that could win a Super Bowl. And they get to the playoffs, and they just completely fold. So I don't think it's a talent thing on the offense or defense. They have plenty of talent. That's very, very aware. We saw that regular season. It's very obvious. It's coaching, and it's the same thing we talked about as soon as Mike McCarthy got hired. We said he just doesn't really too much scheme wise. He's not a motivator. He's not a culture guy. I think he's a yes man that Jerry wanted, and that's what Jerry got. And then, that yes man just let them fold over and, came into that game like a bunch of wet noodles. That's kind of basically what you saw out of the Dallas Cowboys. So that's horrible. That's bad. I mean, if you're the Cowboys, Jerry Jones, if Mike McCarthy is the coach by, the end of this week, I'm appalled. I will. They'll probably do this exact same thing next regular season, and then they'll collapse just like they always do because Mike McCarthy can't get the tempo up, get them ready to play. And, I think it's best, honestly, that Dan Quinn leaves. For a head coaching job, he'll probably get one. I think it's just good to get a reset because it's hard to say that anybody on the staff should after what happened. Because it's not one player. It's not just, somebody had a bad game. It was literally the whole team played like shit for 4 quarters. So hats off to the Packers for taking advantage. Honestly, playing a good game. I'm interested to see how they do against the 49ers. But, I mean, they came prepared. The Cowboys didn't, and the Cowboys got whooped because of it.
Yeah, this is an organizational failure, like I said earlier. Jerry down. Jerry has to change how he does things. Not get just yes men at head coach. Not get guys that, he may have been good 15 years ago as head coach, but now he's just not. So I'm hoping, I've told this to Cecil and many before, I would take anyone else. Jason Garrett back, I don't care. Doak under the bridge, I don't care. Take anyone else as head coach. This needs to change. This was a terrible end to a season where it's just not prepared. All credit to the Packers for moving on. Let's see if they can get this Jordan Love era started off with even bigger fireworks than what we thought. Next game up, we had Sunday night. We had the Lions beating the Rams 24-23, their first playoff win in 32 years. See, so we've experienced something like this as Bengals fans. It was one of the greatest nights of my life, getting to celebrate in the streets of Cincinnati after they did it. The Lions had a very similar feeling, I'm sure, after this game. They win at 24-23. They got the offense started early in this game, and they really settled down. There was only 9 total points scored in the second half. It was 6 by the Rams, 3 by the Lions, no touchdowns. Defense held on strong. That was a big question mark for this Lions team, was this defense. And they did a good job. I mean, Puka Nacua had 181 yards and a touchdown, further cementing his status as a star in this league. Matthew Stafford got hit pretty hard and arguably could have been knocked out of the game if looked at how his eyes were not responsive when he got hit. But he came back, and he's a tough guy and played through injury before and kept him in the game and almost got the win. But I have to say, I'm really happy for the Lions fans, really happy for the Lions organization and guys like Jared Goff who were there when things were not so good at 3-13.
Yeah, this was by far the best playoff game of the weekend. I mean, the storylines leading up to it were great, and the game showed it. The Lions came out physical and got the ball to their playmakers. I mean, the guys, the stars that we thought about, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs in the running back room, they both had pretty good games, both had touchdowns. Jared Goff played very well. No big turnovers or things that they were really, that you worry about with Jared Goff. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown over 100 yards, a lot of catches. I mean, he was a force out there. So, I mean, the Lions offense did their job, and then the defense completely shut down Kyron Williams for the most part. Kyron Williams was barely getting anything, especially in the first half. So that Lions defensive front is one of the top in the league. It's a huge turnaround from 1 year ago where they were bottom 5. Now they're top 5. So, and that's how the Rams really kind of start their offense. So Kyron Williams wasn't able to get going like he has over the last half of the season for him. And then, Puka Nacua had a great game. Don't pretend he didn't. It was great. But Cooper Kupp didn't really get involved, which is kind of concerning for this guy who's been, pretty much your only weapon is barely getting used at times now. Maybe it's double coverage, but this is the Lions secondary that we've had lots of questions about. So, the Rams have a good offense. They have Sean McVay. He's, great at adjusting as well. Him and Raheem Morris just, straight up, completely changed the defense and held the Lions without a touchdown in the second half. They made lots of adjustments to start getting more yards, getting more points on the, trying to at least to make things work. They got Kyron Williams going a little bit more in the second half. Sean McVay has a great coaching staff. The Rams are a very well-coached team. Pretty much the opposite of the Cowboys have all the talent in the world, but a horrible coaching staff. The Rams, they have some talent. They have Cooper Kupp, they have Puka Nacua, they have Matt Stafford, and Kyron Williams, and they have Aaron Donald on the other side. Outside of that, though, there's nobody on this team of note. It's really a cast of nobodies. And that's because of the risks they took. Let's trade all those picks away. We talked about this is what the outcome would be. The idea that the Rams were able to do this season after, what we projected at the beginning of the season, seeing the roster, is amazing. They built an offensive line out of a box of scraps, basically. That's what they did. And, that's great. It just shows you how great of a coach Sean McVay is. If Sean McVay was head coach of the Cowboys, they would win multiple Super Bowls. It's that simple. That guy can make gold out of lead. He's that good. He can do it. I like the Rams. The Rams have a more traditional offseason with a couple more draft picks this year. Start beefing up that defense. I think they can be a team that can stick around. Who knows? Maybe you can compete with the 49ers in the West next year.
I'm with you, Cease. I'm very happy with the job that Sean McVay did this year. It was a patchwork roster. You're right. There's a couple stars and everything, but heading into the year, even taking Puka Nacua out of there, this was a team that was very dependent on this past draft. They actually had draft picks, Kobe Turner on the defensive line, and they get Puka Nacua, and these guys stepped up and played well. And Steve Avila on the offensive line too. So this was maybe doing the most with the least. Him and DeMeco Ryans for the Texans, maybe doing the most with the least this year. Kevin Stefanski with the Browns too could be up there. And that deserves to be noted because they have now, last year they built up in the draft with picks to get this roster back to a point of contention. This year they can do it again. They just have to find a way to do it before Stafford and Donald's Super Bowl window or their career ends, I guess, in this Rams organization. And looks like, if you're right, they could be one of the best teams in the league if they draft well, maybe have some key free agent signings. So we'll definitely keep tabs on them. Excited for the Lions to move on in the Matt Stafford and Jared Goff revenge games. So the Steelers and Bills, were rescheduled because of a snowstorm in Buffalo. It was on Monday, Martin Luther King Day. This was controversial that it got moved. It was more about the safety of people getting to the stadium because a lot of people get stranded when these big blizzards happen, and there was just not enough emergency response teams to help 80,000 fans going to an NFL game. So do I think they would have canceled it if they were playing the Dolphins? I jokingly tweeted that out. Probably still would have done it, but, yes, they would have played the advantage of having the cold weather. In this game, they had the Bills starting off the offense hot. They went up 21-0 and then just kind of died. It's kind of been the same thing with their whole season. They could have just closed the door on the Steelers. Instead, they let the Steelers get back into it, had a chance there to make it a close game at the end. But Mason Rudolph and company did not have enough firepower to get the job done. That's been something that's been one of their problems all season. So at the end of the day, the Bills get the win. They move on. They win by 14, which I guess is kind of an expected outcome now that the weather wasn't as big of a factor. But they do have some things to clean up moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. The Bills were kind of in the driver's seat the whole game. They played well in the first half. Like you said, they kind of fell off. We'd like to see them finish some games. Again, They're one of the best teams. Josh Allen, when he's on, can pretty much do anything. They could go to a Super Bowl if he plays well over the next 2 games. That's a reality. But it is concerning. The defense isn't closing out games. They had some injuries again in this game. So, I mean, I'll give, and we'll talk about the Steelers here too. Really specifically, we'll talk about Mike Tomlin. Tomlin, I mean, the Steelers came out at halftime and then kind of tried to keep themselves in this game is a Mike Tomlin feature, and the reason why Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in the NFL. I mean, he had them fighting the entire 60 minutes against a much better team. And they took advantage of any mistakes, any sputtered drives the Bills would have. I mean, the Steelers played, okay down the stretch, to be honest, especially considering the weather and considering everything. They didn't get the run game going as much as they probably needed to in this one. And that struggled. And, that made, obviously Mason Rudolph have to do some things he didn't necessarily want to. He had to have the ball in his hands more than they would have liked. TJ Watt wasn't in this game either. Their best pass rusher was not part of the game, and they still played the Bills decently well. Again, it's really, if we're going to talk about this game, you can't not talk about the press conference afterwards. Mike Tomlin just straight up walked out when they asked him about his future. There's been reports about Mike Tomlin going, I don't know what I'm going to do going forward. I'm going to, take the offseason for a little bit, spend some time with my family, and then I'll make a decision about my future. If Mike Tomlin leaves the Steelers, that's going to be one of the biggest blows to the Steelers possible. I've heard some media pundits say maybe, Mike Tomlin's a great coach, but maybe he's not the right coach for the Steelers because they need an offensive coach. I don't think that's true. I think you can find an offensive coordinator. They seem to be out there. These guys keep getting hired. They keep becoming head coach. Find an offensive staff guy. You got to find somebody out there that knows how to coach an offense. So he doesn't have to coach. Everybody in this coaching cycle, even Harbaugh, all those guys, Mike Tomlin is a better coach than any of them. And the Steelers decided it'd be better to get another coach. They'd be idiots. And it doesn't seem like it's going to be a Steelers decision. It's Mike Tomlin's decision ultimately. But I think the way the Steelers organization and, more importantly, Steelers fans and former players have acted this year is causing Mike Tomlin to have so many doubts. And that's ridiculous. It really is. I mean, the reality is you might force your Hall of Fame coach out of the door because you just decided you don't like the product on the field. Go look at the GM. Find somebody out there. There's going to be some offensive mind who's not a complete idiot that can go out there. Maybe they shouldn't have drafted Kenny Pickett. That's not Mike Tomlin's decision. Maybe they should have waited another draft and moved up and gotten a real quarterback. There's all these things. But I know Mike Tomlin gets that team ready, which is when you're a head coach, it's not about the personnel you draft. It's about you're given a roster and you coach that team to play as hard as you can to get as many wins as you can with the talent on the team. And he does that every year. This is not the most talented Steelers team. It's just not. It's not the most talented defense by any means, but they come to play, and they played well down the stretch, especially after they got off to some weird games early on. They made the playoffs this year, which is astounding. That's good for them. They played well, and if Mike Tomlin leaves, it's the biggest mistake ever. The Bills have a much bigger test against the Kansas City Chiefs we'll get to. Again, the inconsistency could haunt them. We'll get to it. But I think the Steelers organization may have finally barked a little too loudly, and it might cause themselves to – because I'm going to tell you right now, if another coach comes in there, even if it's an offensive guy, this team ain't having a winning season. It's just not. That's the reality. Even if they get a rookie quarterback somehow, which there's no way to do that right now because of their draft pick and all that, there's just no way the Steelers organization is going to be that aggressive. They're not going to have a winning season because Mike Tomlin gets them at least, I'd say, anywhere between 2 and 3 wins a year they shouldn't have.
I would agree. He apparently told the team behind closed doors, this is just a rumor, that he's back for next year, but that's the last year on his contract. He has been, weighing his coaching future. So that's at least out there. I'm with you. I think it's crazy for Steelers fans who want him gone, who have wanted him gone, gets more wins out of this roster than just about anyone else. We just talked about Sean McVay. In a similar mold, the Steelers are in this weird situation where they get more wins than they should every year, and then they don't get the chance to go get that quarterback that they can take them to the next level. That's something to watch out. You're right. I don't know what the Steelers can do to be aggressive, but They can go get a free agent quarterback this offseason. There's going to be a couple of names out there they can go trade for. Maybe they can just package 3 first-round picks in a row to move up and get one of the top 3 quarterbacks in this draft. I don't know. It's going to be tough to do. But if you have a coach who says this next year might be my last year, and he's a very good coach, and you have a defense that can put things together, especially when Cam Hayward is healthy and some young guys, yeah, you might want to do that. You might want to trade 3 first-round picks to get the quarterback and then fix the offensive line through free agency and let everything else fall where it may, because that's how you become a scary team. Otherwise, this middling Steelers stuff, yeah, they can make the playoffs. Mike Tomlin can take average teams to make the playoffs. But at the end of the day, what does that get you in the end? Nothing. So they got to figure that out, and it might be something where they do some uncharacteristic things for Steelers franchises just based on the contract situation and the quarterback situation going on in Pittsburgh. Last game of the weekend, Cease, we had the Buccaneers killing the Eagles 32-9. This one was not really that close. There was a big play by Devontae Smith that really helped the Eagles score a touchdown. But otherwise, not even close. Baker Mayfield was on fire, 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, and that's including a lot of drops. I think they had the most drops in the playoffs over the last 5 or 7 years or something like that. Mike Evans had a couple too, which is uncharacteristic. I'm so happy for the Buccaneers. Yes, NFC South winning that is not the hardest thing to do, but you come, this year you signed Baker Mayfield for $4 million. We've talked about it 100 times on this podcast. $4 million. You prove that the quarterback market is a sham, and you should just pay guys what they're worth if you can afford to do that, unless they're Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, that type of thing. And Baker gets the final FU to the Browns and saying hey, I want a playoff game with the Buccaneers, the NFC South team. We were 9-8 during the season, but I got the playoff win. I could have been that guy for you. The Browns lose to the Texans. It was a fitting end, a storybook ending. It opened up with the Browns getting demolished. It ended with the Buccaneers getting the win and Baker playing his tail off.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, all the drops. The defense played decently well, and that was huge as well. The only thing they really didn't bottle up was Devontae Smith for the Eagles' offense. If you're the Eagles, you just played horribly for 4 quarters. It was really not close, and that defense is just awful right now. You had basically Matt Patricia become the coordinator, have 5 games left in the season. That's not a good sign for a team. When you just basically go, we're just making well, I know we're winning games and we're about to go to the playoffs, but we just want to change the scheme basically and get a new coach. Yeah, they didn't tackle anybody in this game. I've never seen so many missed tackles, and I'm a Bengals fan. There's missed tackles all over the place. It's frustrating. It's stupid. It's coaching at a certain point. I don't know what's going to happen with Nick Sirianni. I'm usually not a fan of firing a coach so early, especially, they went to the Super Bowl last year. They're in the playoffs this year, but this kind of collapse, I've seen people get fired for less. Especially in Philadelphia. I don't think it's the worst thing if he gets fired. I'm not going to say it's a good or bad move. I don't really know because Nick Sirianni only has 2 seasons, so it's hard to really say, what's the quality. And both his coordinators left, and the guys that replaced him did not do anywhere near as good a job. He's really missing really missing Gannon and Steichen, their offensive and defensive coordinators. So again, a coaching staff is important. Everyone likes to talk about it's just the head coach, but the head coach has also got to create a staff that can win and can play well. It's hard to come back from losing 2 guys like that. That's a lot of people to lose, and that's 2 huge play calling decision makers because both those guys were play callers too. Sirianni didn't do that. Jalen Hurts in this game struggled mightily. He doesn't look 100%. I don't think he is. I think there could be an injury, especially with the knee, because all in this game, which has also been a signature thing with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts barely ever moved out of the pocket. He just kind of sat around and let himself completions, and the whole offense was frustrated. And, it was just, again, just like the Cowboys, but in a different way. It was just a complete collapse. It's a complete collapse from a coaching standpoint, from the players' execution. And the did whatever they wanted, and the Eagles need to fix that secondary. Um, Jason Kelsey is retiring. That's a huge hole for them. The guy is, I think, a five-time All Pro first team. That's crazy. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. You don't just replace that. And he was playing at a high level as well. Um, and more importantly, yeah, he's a great center, but I don't think they're going to be able to do the tush push or the brotherly shove without him. I think he's the key to that play. As much as everyone just wants to say, "Oh, fair play," it's Jason Kelsey's the reason that play works so well. Jason Kelsey straight up goes lower than anybody else can. You can watch the clip over and over, and then there's some stupid stuff about him moving the ball forward, all that, whatever. The reality is, when that ball is snapped, he's so low in leverage, and the guys get above him basically, and he just keeps pushing guys because he's that strong, he's that talented. So I think there's going to be some changes in Philadelphia. I don't know what that's going to mean. I have no idea what the Eagles are going to look like next year, or we're going to have to wait to see a couple games into the season and even know if this team is actually good or not, or if it's going to be if they're going to reset, fix their secondary, fix their defense a little bit, Jalen Hurts gets healthier and they can play a little better, or if it's just going to be a continuation of the collapse that kind of happened at the end of the season. There's no telling. We'll see what they do in the offseason here, but there's a lot of question marks for this Eagles team. And I've never seen a team collapse so quickly, not just from one season to the next, but from the first half of the season to the second half.
Yeah, this is a big collapse because you're right. They went to a team who they beat the Chiefs, and yeah, the Chiefs weren't playing that well at that point, but 10-1 to going to I would have picked them. I picked against them in the playoffs if they had played anyone in the NFL almost, besides the Panthers and the Jets. If they were playing, or maybe the Commanders too, but if they were playing the Bears or something, I probably would have taken the Bears. That's how bad they played over the last several weeks. So there's a lot of discussion about Nick Sirianni and his future with the organization. It is tough. You lose two coordinators. Do you give him some grace because he went to the Super Bowl last year? Do you try to find him new coordinators to try to revamp this thing? Jalen Hurts was obviously not 100%. There's a lot of, we got to get him back to playing good football as well because, he was rumored as being a top 5 quarterback. We had cautioned against that a little bit. He's top 10, he's doing well, but maybe not that well. Breaking news, Cecil, on the podcast too. Jason Kelsey said he did not retire, and he said he would do it when it's time. He did that on his own podcast apparently this morning, I guess. So that's coming out. So we'll see.
Breaking,
I guess. But they also it kind of comes down to everything, right? So they've loved drafting in the trenches, and that's great, but they've also aged in places too. Jason Kelsey has gotten older. He's not playing at the highest level. He's playing very, very well. You have plenty of defensive linemen that are taking reps from the young guys. So you have Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox, who are still very good players, but you have guys who are sitting on the bench. You have a good rotation of guys, but not the guys who are creating this impact. And then you have Darius Slay and James Bradbury in the secondary, who are getting burnt and not making tackles, and that's another place where you've just aged out. Sometimes you need to move your draft picks to positions you're actually going to use them. Sometimes you have to move on from veterans, even if you don't want to. I'm not saying they should move on from Jason Kelsey or even the two defensive linemen, Fletcher Cox or Brandon Graham, but you have to have a better plan than that because it looks like they're kind of wearing down at the end of the season too, and some of that might have to do with some age. So it's really cool that we can tell Howie Roseman he did a great job building this roster and that he drafts well because he takes all the Georgia defensive linemen, but nowhere to be seen. They weren't getting pressure on the quarterback. They weren't nothing. So they got to they have a lot to figure out. It starts again from just like the Cowboys. When you have a failure like this, it starts from the top down. You have to have some self-reflection. If you're Howie Roseman, you got to go all the way down to the coaching staff, to the players, and figure out what's going to go on because this is something I don't think we've ever seen anything like this one. And people comparing it to the Steelers, who were 11-0 a couple years ago. No, not even close. This is not even close. The Steelers were not. Everyone knew the Steelers weren't that good. Eagles, we thought they were a very good team and well constructed. It hurts my head when I hear that argument. All right, let's go to the divisional round. Cease, we have 4 games to watch this weekend, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. We're going to start it off with the Houston Texans and the Baltimore Ravens. Now, this line has jumped around, opened at 9.5, went down to 8, and now back up to 9 for the Ravens at home. Cease, who are you going with?
So my gut really wants me to pick this Texans straight up, but my brain is telling me that's dumb. Don't do that. That's stupid. So I'm going to pick the Ravens to win the game because, one, they're playing at home. They played very well down the stretch, and the Texans played really well last game, but there's still some lingering question marks about their team overall. I will be rooting like die this weekend. I'm going to pick them to cover 9 points. I'd cover them basically anything that's if it's above if it's 7 points or above, I'm picking them. That's the reality for me. Wherever this line goes, and if it goes higher, that's just free money for me. Because here are the things I think can happen, and the reasons why I think the Texans can win this game. I think the Ravens could come out flat. The reality is they had a similar situation 3 years ago, and they lost to the Titans. They got out, and they got beat up. They were not ready. I don't know. Obviously things can change. People argue, but same organization, same coach, mostly. That they came out flat. I think that naturally happens when you sit down for so long. You have a team that just played really well the week before. They've got a lot of momentum going into this game. I think that's going to play for the Texans. And I think that'll keep this game very close. I think it will be a close game. I worry that the weather in Baltimore can kind of slow down the Texans because they're as used to it since they play at home in a nice warm part of the country. They're not going to be at home this time, and that Baltimore crowd is going to be in full throat. They're going to be loud, and it's going to be harder for C.J. Stroud offense to communicate. So for that, will come out because they do have a more talented roster. They have a good head coach, and they have a huge home field advantage in this one. But I think the Texans will give them a good game, and the Texans are able to pull it out. I don't think this is going to be I think it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a good game to watch, but the Ravens are the more talented team, and it just makes sense if you're doing a straight up to do the Ravens. But if you're a gambler, I would take Texans money line all day and just sit back and enjoy the game.
Yeah, Cease,
Texans spread, I suppose to say.
Oh yeah. I'm with you. I did waffle on this one back and forth in terms of the spread. 9 is, we've had some pretty big playoff spreads for this weekend in comparison to the past years just because of the upsets and everything else that happened and some of the blowouts as well. But I'm taking the Ravens to win and the Texans with the points as well. The reason why I was waffling on it is this team is a little bit different than the one 3 years ago in that Todd Monken's offense can help them, I think, not come out flat. It's probably a little bit easier to come out flat when you're just doing the same Greg Roman offense where you're just running the ball a million times. And like that worked. It was a good, but now they're actually utilizing wide receivers and everything. So I do think that, and that's a big reason why they're going to win. Mark Andrews activated off of IR, so he's able to come back. If not this game, he'll be here next game probably. This is an offense that I think can do some damage. So I'm taking the Ravens to win, but I can't pick against the Stroud boys. C.J. Stroud, still an incredible season. Top 10 NFL quarterback type of season this year. And even with guys getting hurt, Tank Dell's out. Noah Brown just got hurt last week. He's on IR now. So limited targets. He still has Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz. I think they're going to be able to get enough done to keep this one close. And at the very least, I hope that we get some close playoff games this week. So maybe that's a little bit of hope there too. On Saturday night, we have the Packers and 49ers, the teams that have matched up in the playoffs so many times in the last several years. A little bit different look now with Jordan Love at quarterback for the Packers now ceased. The 49ers at home, another line that has been moving. It started at like 10, and now it's all the way down to 8 for San Francisco.
Yeah, I will take San Francisco to win and cover 8 all day. I would take them at 9.5, 10 points. I would take them at 10 points. After 10.5, we're going to have a little bit. Because, you're kind of trying to risk for really teasing the spread up by a point is not going to win you that much more money. So, but if you're a gambler here and you're getting 8.5, tease it up to 9.5. Honestly, this is maybe a good tease up week because 8.5 versus 9.5 is like this. Do you really think the 49ers are going to be weirdly up by 3 field goals basically, or have some weird? It's San Francisco. They might get some rain. That's something to consider. We always try to take a look at our weather reports here. But, who knows how much that's really going to affect them. The Packers beat the Cowboys like they seem to always do in the playoffs, to a lot of the people we know's chagrin. But the other trend Packers have had, as our resident Packers fan has pointed out at times. The 49ers destroy the Packers every time in the playoffs without fail. So I think that's going to continue to happen. I think that this 49ers team is one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. I think they're really good at the is a running back. They are a run first team. The Packers are one of the worst teams against the run in the NFL. They really are. It's that simple. They can run the football against the Packers. They have offensive weapons that are physical and can run after catch, which is something the Packers are going to struggle with. Jair Alexander is still banged up a little bit as well. I don't think the Packers defense is going to be able to take advantage like they did against the Cowboys. I think the Packers offense is going to struggle more because Aaron Jones isn't going to be able to get the ground game going the same way he did against big guys. The Cowboys are small. The 49ers, there are some big dudes out there in the front seven. They are massive. They are built for strength. That's how this team likes to play. They're physical. If they give up some, I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Love, throws for, 250 yards. I think that can happen. The 49ers secondary is a weakness on defense. But I don't think it's going to be significant. I think that it's going to be more garbage time more than anything. They are a physical team. They are a strong team. The Packers are not going to match up well with them. So I think the 49ers win this game. I'm not saying the Packers are bad. I'm interested to see how they play against this team because Kyle Shanahan's going to be prepared. And also the Packers defense, basically they're matching strength against weakness on offense versus defense. So we'll see how it plays out. But I think 49ers all the way.
Yeah, my biggest issue with the 49ers this year, or in terms of their future, was just making sure they stayed healthy. They have so many injury-prone guys on this roster, guys who have had injuries in the last several years, whether it's Kittle, McCaffrey, Trent Williams. I just want to make sure they're healthy. And after this 2 weeks to get refreshed, I think they're going to kill the Packers. I have thought about moving the line all the way up to 13.5, maybe just 12.5, because then you get touchdown and 2 field goals. You're right. The defense will be able to shut down the run for the Packers, putting the game in Jordan Love's hands. I don't think the game plan will be quite as bad as the Cowboys was. 49ers as well will be able to run on the Packers. And I think the last time, they got a bye. We were talking the 49ers, what the heck? They lost 3 games in a row. They get on that bye, and then they started covering these massive spreads the second half of the season. It was, a lot of double-digit spreads they were able to cover against some good teams, too. They were able to win by double digits. I'm taking 49ers. I could see Brock Purdy maybe coming out flat, but honestly, I think the running game and the mismatch between running games here, I think is going to be the key to this one. I think the 49ers win and cover, probably win by about 2 touchdowns. I think you're right. I think it's something that worth considering moving that line just a little bit. On Sunday, we have the Buccaneers and Lions in the first game. This one, second home playoff game for Detroit. We have Detroit Lions favored by 6.5 points.
Yeah, I'm going to go Lions to win. I'm going to go and say I'm going to take the Buccaneers with the points right now. I think they're going to play close because I think Baker Mayfield's starting hot. I think they could have had an even better game last year. And basically, the Lions' secondary struggles, not as much as the Eagles, but they still struggle a lot. We saw that with Puka Nacua. I could see Mike Evans having a really big game this week, especially considering all the drops he's want to get right, and Baker Mayfield's going to keep throwing him the ball and feeding it to him. I don't think Tampa Bay's a pass-first offense. They're, Rashad Wright's there, and he's had some good games, but it's not really about him in any way. So it's going to be what Baker wants. Baker will gladly throw the ball 40 times a game, and that's the kind of game he's probably going to get in this matchup. So I don't know how necessarily close it's going to be throughout, but I think the Lions offense is going to play decently well. I think the Buccaneers have played better on defense than they maybe are. But the reality is it's kind of a question of the Lions got the monkey off their back of never having a playoff win in, 30 years almost, over 30 years. But now it's a question of what if. Are they going to play loose and free, or are they everyone's just so elated by what already happened? I don't think Dan Campbell's going to just be elated. I think Dan Campbell's going to get those guys ready. He's a motivator. People want to say all kinds of things about him. He's a gambler. Maybe he's not the best X and O guy, but he's a hell of a motivator. He's going to get them ready to play at home time. But I think Baker Mayfield and that passing attack will keep it close enough. So I think Lions win it. I think they'll be in control for most of the time. But I think they're going to keep trying to heave the ball downfield to keep it close.
I'm with you with the pick there. Lions straight up, but Buccaneers with the points. I like what you said too about Baker Mayfield. Like, it's going to be his game to prove himself again. Like, there's the Lions secondary is not very good. He has way outmatched receivers for them. And the Lions are going to probably try to get the lead and run the ball, so it might be a little bit of catch up. But at the end of the day, I do think they keep it close just because they're like Mike Evans will have some big plays. He's going to want to have a better performance this week after having a couple of those drops. Baker Mayfield playing with a fire to keep it close, but like you said, Dan Campbell will have these guys ready to play too, and they have some legit star power. And I think maybe we don't talk about it because it's Detroit, or like maybe it's just the offense having some issues sometimes when Jared Goff gets pressured. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, 1,500 yards this year. I mean, I would say approaching top 5 wide receiver in the league territory. Jahmyr Gibbs, we've both been high on all this year. Needs to get more snaps and has just really opened up the running game for both him and David Montgomery, honestly. So I'm excited for this one. I think the offensive line for the Lions makes a big impact too, because the Buccaneers do have some guys who can get after the quarterback, including Yaya Diaby, who's had a fantastic rookie season. But I think the Lions' offensive line can help them get this win and go to the conference championship game. Never thought I'd be saying that one. All right, the game of the weekend, I think we can say, the Kansas City Chiefs at the Buffalo Bills. The Chiefs, Bills, Bengals have been playing each other in the playoffs the last several years and have this 3-way rivalry, it seems like. The Bills are going to want to get back at the Chiefs for all the heartbreak they've caused in the past. The Bills are at home and favored by 3 points, Cease.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Bills to win it. And because it's a small spread, I'm gonna go Bills to cover too. I think this is going to be interesting because it's the first time the Chiefs have gone on the road in the playoffs. We saw how crazy the game earlier this year happened. I think to the Bills, this means everything. Obviously, the Chiefs, they know it. They played these guys before. They're going to be play. But I think there's just a lot of it's the playoffs. It's Buffalo's chance fans to finally just advance past the Chiefs. I think that's a huge thing here. I think if anybody can really crack the defense that he has thrown, it's Josh Allen. This game is pretty much all on Josh Allen at all times because Josh Allen can make things happen against even a talented defense that Kansas City has. I think Pat Mahomes is going to get his in this game. I think he'll play decently well. I think Rashee Rice will probably have a good game. Pacheco will be less effective in this game because the Bills are good again, better against the run, not elite, but good. It really is going to come down to the two quarterbacks. I mean, that's kind of what everybody wants. That's what the NFL wants. It's kind of like their dream scenario is to have these two. It's going to look different. I don't know what exactly that's going to entail because these teams have struggled at times. The Bills have a lot of talent still, but they struggled down the stretch to keep things going. But they played better, but inconsistent still. The Chiefs' offense has been a shell of itself. So I just think with that being said, I think the Bills and Josh Allen are going to try to score a lot of points. They're going to try to keep scoring. And it's going to be a question of, is Kansas City going to be able to put up as many points? Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking a blowout. This game could end up being anywhere from probably like the 20-point range is what somebody could score. If somebody gets to that point, I think it's that simple. If you get to 4 touchdowns, most likely you're going to win this game. Now, are they going to do that against Kansas City Chiefs? Josh can do that. It's just if he turns over the ball like he's been prone to do, they won't, and the Chiefs will win this game. So if Josh Allen has more than one turnover, the Chiefs are going to win this game. But if he only has one or less, I think the Bills win it, and that's why I'm going to pick the Bills to win and cover.
You're right. The over-under is only 45.5, so if you get 4 touchdowns, you're probably winning this game the way at least it sets up. I think I'm going Bills to win and cover as well because that is going to be the most hostile environment I think we've seen in an NFL game. The Bills fans are crazy enough. They've had this heartbreak with the Chiefs. There's been, like Bengals fans can relate to, there's been some questionable calls in some of the games. There's been like the coin flip that really screwed them, and like not that was anything wrong with the coin flip, but just the coin flip got, that's how they got the win. The Chiefs in one of the playoff games a couple years ago. This is going to be such a hostile environment. You're right. The Chiefs' first road playoff game. Taylor Swift's going to be freezing her butt off up in Buffalo. Just crazy. So that the environment's going to be part of the reason why I'm taking this one. But also I think Josh Allen's ability to run is going to be huge in this game. You're right. Ball security is job security, so he's going to have to make sure he doesn't fumble because he might throw a pick in this one. And if he throws one pick, it's fine. But turning over the ball twice against the Chiefs, they will make you pay. So I think just scrambling, getting out of the pocket, making sure they're committed to James Cook as well. He doesn't score rushing touchdowns because Josh Allen gets all those, but just making sure he can help move the chains. And making sure Stephon Diggs doesn't have a tantrum on the sideline again. Just keeping the vibes good. You got to stay together if you're going to beat the Chiefs. That's going to be huge. The defense has played pretty well for the Bills. They've got plenty of players who have been there before. So I'm trusting the Bills to get the job done. The Chiefs have had a good season, and I was impressed how last week, yes, it was cold, but the first time they had committed to the run in a big way because that's just how teams are playing them. Like the wide receivers aren't winning. The safeties are playing too deep to stop Patrick Mahomes. You have to run the football. That's going to win you playoff games, and they did that. And I guess I should have expected Andy Reid to do that because he's a very great NFL head coach. But we'll see if they can do it again against the Bills. Maybe the Bills can stop the run a lot easier than maybe people think, and then they do throw the ball too much. Who knows? But end of the day, going Bills because of the environment and because of Josh Allen's ability to stretch the field vertically with his arm and also to run the ball. So we both have the same pick there. Cease, any final thoughts for the week?
No, I think we picked everything the same, which always worries me. But I think we have a good spot. I think that what we're saying here is there's going to be a lot of teams that probably the favorites should all win, most likely. But what we're really thinking is they're going to be a lot closer than some people think besides the 49ers-Packers game. So what I'm really hoping for, my final thought is I just want some good playoff games this week. It gets boring. You get with all of your friends. You sit there and you're ready for football, and you just watch a team get blown out before halftime, and then you're just awkwardly sitting there for 2 hours, and then there's a half hour between the two games, and you're just going, I'm really bored. So good games. I want to have them to be at least competitive. No blowouts, unless you're the 49ers.
Yeah, this is not something a lot of people like to do, but first of all, thank you for not saying you enjoyed watching my utter disbelief in the Cowboys and their performance this week. That's good because it was not fun. But to not always popular to do, but maybe a little money line parlay on the four teams this week. If you like the teams that we picked, I'm pretty confident in the money line. The spreads are something where, yeah, I could see the Buccaneers, the Lions winning by a touchdown. I could see the 49ers somehow making the game close, or the Ravens not coming out flat and covering. So just, they're picking all favorites, so the odds aren't going to be great, but you can still make some money off of it. Just something to consider. Also, I'll remind everyone to like and subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. It helps us as we move along here. Reminder, we'll be back next week to recap the divisional round and preview the conference championship round. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next week.